The story kicks off inside a buzzing gaming cafe, where people were all talking about one thing. Kang-chi had done it again. First place, new map, same guy. It didn't matter that the new map had just dropped. Kang-chi was already sitting on the throne like it was made for him. The game was called Dungeon Craft, where players could build and conquer dungeons. But no matter how fast or smart others played, Kang-chi always came out on top. Some people were starting to get suspicious. One guy muttered that maybe Kang-chi wasn't even playing himself anymore. Maybe bots were doing the work. Kang-chi heard that and just stayed quiet. Even his buddy was confused why he kept coming to this cheap gaming cafe when he clearly had enough cash to game from a fancy setup at home. Kang-chi just shrugged it off, said he liked the food here, then casually dropped the news he'd topped the rankings again, just like that. Someone scoffed, saying he made it sound like a walk in the park. Another one said he probably was a bot, the way he played like a machine. Kang-chi didn't disagree. Truth was, this game was the only place where he felt in control. Beating levels, solving puzzles, crushing maps. This was his zone. In the real world, though, he felt useless. Power poles that couldn't be moved, rules that made no sense. Life was messy and stubborn. In Dungeon Craft, one click was enough to fix everything. As he left the cafe and crossed the street, lost in thought, a truck nearly slammed into him. The driver slammed the brakes just in time, yelling at him like he was nuts. Kang-chi pointed at the green light. He had the right-of-way, but the driver just looked confused, like reality itself had glitched. Kang-chi walked away, even more frustrated. This world wasn't fair. If he could rebuild it, he'd change everything, make it work the way he wanted. Just as he was thinking that, something awful happened. A loud crack came from a nearby construction site. A metal beam snapped off and came crashing down toward a little girl playing nearby. Even though he thought it was dumb for her to be there, Kang-chi didn't hesitate. He ran, pushed her out of the way, took the hit himself. Pain, darkness, that's all he felt. Next thing he knew, it was like he was floating in space, drifting in nothingness. He didn't feel dead, but he wasn't really alive either. Then, a strange voice echoed in the void. A glowing being appeared, massive and otherworldly, with 3 eyes and a presence that felt both divine and terrifying. She told him it was time to face the truth. Kang-chi had no clue what this oblivion place was. The being said he was getting a second chance, that death was just a doorway to another life, and that he had memories to reclaim. He was still confused, asking for it to be explained in a simpler way. The being just told him to open his eyes. Suddenly, a force slammed into his mind like a lightning strike. He woke up in a stone room, all alone. The place looked like it belonged in some medieval fantasy. He stumbled over to a mirror, and what he saw almost made him fall over. A demon, red eyes, horns, fangs. That was him now. He panicked. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't cosplay. This was something else. Then, out of nowhere, he heard someone whispering behind him. Before he could turn around, pain exploded through his chest. He'd been stabbed. Hard. Blood spilled out of his mouth as he dropped to the ground. A woman stood above him, laughing like she'd just won a game. She looked down at him with zero sympathy, like hurting him was a joke. She said she hated him. That's why she did it. Nothing deeper, just pure hate. She raised her blade again, ready to finish the job. But before she could, someone else stepped in. A man with long hair and a whip smacked the weapon right out of her hands with perfect aim. She stumbled back, surprised and pissed. She demanded to know why he was here again. This guy named Tarm. And just like that, Kang-chi's new life, whatever it was, had truly begun. Terry glanced at the girl with a serious look, clearly not happy about what she did. He reminded her that the guy lying there was her own brother. Meanwhile, Keiichi had no clue who this man was. Tarm walked over calmly, saying someone named Kella was messing with him again. Then he handed him a drink that looked like a healing potion. Thinking it would help, Kella took a sip, but the moment it hit his throat, he choked and spat it all out. His body felt like it was on fire. That thing wasn't a potion, it was clearly poison. Caldera stood there watching, completely unfazed, as if she was waiting for him to drop dead. Tarm checked his condition and said he was definitely in pain but not dying, so the whole experiment had failed. Kella could barely think straight through the burning. He just kept wondering why this was happening and why life had to be so painful. Then the heavy castle doors creaked open. The Demon King had returned from hunting heroes. Caldera and Tarm felt his presence right away and tensed up. Kella, still hurting, froze when he heard someone call this man their father. That word hit him hard. Could this terrifying figure really be his dad? The Demon King entered, looking furious at all the noise. Kella couldn't believe what he was seeing. This was supposed to be his father? Caldera tried to shift the blame, but the king wasn't having any of it. Without hesitation, he grabbed both kids by the neck, calling their actions a disgrace. The sound of screams echoed through the stone halls. The two knelt before him, begging for forgiveness. Kella just stood there, trying to wrap his head around everything. If those two were really his siblings, did that make him the Demon King's son too? The king roared that only two things were allowed in his castle: the birth of a powerful demon or the honorable death of an enemy. Then, without warning, he stomped on Kella's head, nearly crushing him. Kella couldn't move. It was clear now, he hadn't just landed in another world. He had landed into the worst possible life. He was the Demon King's kid. Of all people, it had to be him. A memory flashed in his head. He was small, crying after someone named Sarah stabbed him in the eye with a fork. His mother didn't comfort him. She just told him it must have hurt. He told her that Tarm had poisoned his food once. Her only advice? Fight back. That was the demon way. She said if he didn't kill them first, they'd kill him. Then, without hesitation, she stabbed him in the gut with a dagger, calling it a lesson. He woke up in bed, breathing hard. His servant, Rin, asked if he was okay. Kella realized that this body he now lived in remembered everything, all the trauma, all the pain. But strangely, he was already fully healed. His new body must have some crazy regeneration. Rin told him he'd been out for a while and it was almost time for the family meal. He looked at her and remembered how different she was from the others. She'd always been quiet, but still kind of a bully. She'd pick his clothes for parties, but never actually help him get dressed. She once told him that if he expected her to do that, he should be the one dressing her. It was just sarcasm, of course, so he stopped expecting help. Other times, she dumped chores on him, like cleaning the deck, or even went to sleep in his bed, leaving a doll behind to take her place during work. Kella couldn't understand how the old him, the real Kella, had allowed himself to be pushed around like that. But that guy was gone. Now he was in control and things were going to be different. No more being treated like trash. Even so, life in this world didn't seem much better than the one he'd left behind. Weak people still got crushed, and every family meal seemed like a reminder of that. He arrived late to the dinner table, and his father immediately noticed. His cold, commanding voice cut through the air. Kella sat down, feeling the weight of his father's presence. Now, he fully understood why everyone feared the Demon King. Sal just went ahead and stabbed a knife into his own leg like it was nothing. The pain was sharp, but even the maid nearby just laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. Sarah made a comment about how tired he looked and told him to eat more. Keller, sitting there quietly, knew he had to keep everything hidden, especially the fact that he wasn't who they thought he was anymore. He forced himself to eat, only to realize, again, the food was laced with poison. Tiam was smiling as if nothing was wrong and said she made the soup special for him, asking if he liked it. He nodded, but inside he was fuming. He didn't see these demons as his family. To him, they were the enemy. He knew this couldn't keep going. He had to take control. In his past life, he had dreams. He was top tier at designing dungeon maps in games. But in real life, he was a nobody, always looked down on, never able to fight back. He didn't want to die being worthless again. The anger just bubbled over. Without thinking, he grabbed the poisoned soup and splashed it right into Hilda's face, basically telling her to try her own gift. Then he ripped the knife out of his leg and hurled it at TM, hitting her in the shoulder. Finally, he looked at the Demon King and made it clear. No more fake family dinners. From now on, everyone could eat alone. The whole room froze. No one could believe what just happened. Kella stood there, burning with fury, finally feeling like he'd done something real. But of course, it didn't last. His own father crushed him right after that. Still, somehow, his body healed fast, and he felt something strange growing inside him. Power. Real power. That's when he realized, yeah, he really was the Demon King's son. Soon, Rin reminded him it was almost time for his demon power lesson. He snapped at her to shut it, saying he already knew. She was stunned. He was never like that before. But Kella didn't care. From what he remembered, that training session was one of the worst things the old Kella had ever experienced. Even so, he wasn't planning to skip it. At the training hall, the instructors said Sierra and TM wouldn't be joining that day, so the rest of the royal kids would be up for testing. Kella looked at them and remembered all the beatings, all the bullying. They used to mess him up just for fun. And Sierra? She encouraged it. The old Kella had no fight in him, too soft. But now King Shi was in control, and this time, things were going to be different. When the instructor asked what the last lesson had covered, one of the bullies smugly brought up a past duel with Kella, calling him Sir, just to mock him. Kella started to get mad, and the instructor let them fight again. The bully grinned, thinking it would be another easy win. The others whispered that he'd get crushed like usual, and even joked about him crying. But this time was different. Kella gathered his energy, and suddenly everyone around felt it pure pressure. They stared in shock, wondering where all that mana came from. The bully couldn't even move, frozen with fear. Kella said he'd take it easy and throw just one punch, and then smash the guy's face into the floor like tossing trash. Silence, total shock. The bully was wrecked. No teeth, one eye swollen shut, couldn't even speak. Kella stared him down and coldly asked if he remembered what he said earlier. The guy mumbled an apology, and Kella warned him not to screw up again or he'd be finished next time. The others were shaken. This wasn't the same Kella they knew. Even the instructor flinched when Kella spoke, asking if the class would continue. He nodded quickly, too scared to argue. Rin just stood there, watching in silence, thinking something about him was way off. Meanwhile, far away, the Demon King was secretly watching everything. Back in the castle, TM was soaking in a healing tub, covered in cuts and bruises, still furious that Kella had the guts to throw that poison junk right in her face. So things start with Tarm telling someone named Sarah to chill out and get better, since she can't heal like Kella can. Then Katara pipes up, thinking it's weird that only Kella has this super healing power. Another guy, TM, jumps in, saying Kella must have gone through some big change because he's totally different now. TM then notices their dad's actually smiling about what Kella did, and he's never seen his dad smile for real before. Sarah's like, nah, that smile probably wasn't for Kella, but Tom keeps saying it's not normal and something's off. Someone named Sess asks what he means, and he suggests maybe she'd rather die than team up with Ella, but they should at least stop fighting to help him out. Sarah's cool with that idea, but warns him that if he pulls anything, he's dead before he even looks at their dad again. Meanwhile, Ella's in class and the instructor's showing a magic hologram of the last Demon King, Hel Kaldan, who looks absolutely nuts. Kella thinks he looks pretty demonic. The instructor explains Turl was super powerful but got betrayed and died because of some sneaky guilds. Kella realizes this is part of his new memories, remembering these guilds surrounding the kingdom. The instructor also mentions these guilds have the current Demon King basically stuck in his castle. The Celestial Guild, the biggest one, is planning an attack, so students need to train hard to help the king. Everyone then pledges to fight for demon honor. Later, Kella's thinking about what to do, feeling like he could die any minute if he stays. He asks Rin if her dad will be gone for 3 days, and she says yes. He asks if she knows of any weak spots in the castle, any maps they could use. He says enemies use neglected areas to attack, but he'll use the next trip to map everything and give it to her dad so he can wipe out the enemies. Kel decides this is his new job. He also wants to make a special dungeon, different from reality, so he can draw the map however he wants. So he tells Rin to build a secret office in the castle basement right away. When she asks what it's for, he says he needs a secret place to work, somewhere her dad won't know about. At the same time, the Demon King is chilling in his recovery tub, thinking he needs to keep an eye on Ella and confirm something with his son in person. Ella finally gets to the messy basement office. Rin explains its secret, so it's the best she could do. Kella tells her to be more careful next time. Rin thinks he's been tougher lately, and it's actually working. She also thinks Kella's been scary, but finds him attractive now, because he's becoming a real man. Kella then tells Rin to stop standing there and get him some coffee, now. Rin rushes off, confused about what coffee is. Ella thinks he's finally alone and can look at the map. He sees the Demon King's castle is in the worst defensive spot, so he decides to make a new map from scratch, using his memories. Meanwhile, Rin's still running around, lost, when she bumps into the Demon King. He asks what she's doing in the basement without Kella and wants to know where his son is and what he's doing. Rin gets nervous, remembering Kella's secret request, but the king demands an answer. While she's hesitating, Ella's having a blast making his new map, which reminds him of his favorite game, Dungeon Craft. He loves making maps to concentrate and have fun. Suddenly, the door gets kicked in and the Demon King bursts in, furious about the secret office. Kella barely reacts before his dad punches him, stomach first, with crazy force. The king says if Kella really wants to help, he shouldn't hide anything. Kella just spits up blood, trying to stay awake. He thinks this pain is way worse than anything his brothers felt and might actually die. But then, still bleeding, Kella hands his dad the map, explaining he's mapped the whole area, marking weak spots and vulnerable places. The Demon King looks at the map and slowly pulls his fist out of Ella's body, letting him breathe. He asks why Ella did it in secret. Kella explains he was afraid his dad wouldn't allow it if he announced it before finishing. He wanted to show the finished map because as the Demon King's son, he wanted to help destroy the Celestial Guild. They stare at each other intensely. Rin, watching, can't believe Ella is talking to his dad like that. The Demon King then asks how long he needs to finish the plan. Kella, surprised but wounded, says 5. The king asks if he means 5 days. Kella, still out of breath, says 5 hours, which puzzles the king. Kella says they can finish all the defense and counterattack construction in that time, and he wants to lead the operation. The Demon King looks at his son in disbelief. He says the plan sounds great, but warns that if Kella's just talking big, he'll destroy the map, and Kella too. Kella says he gets it and thinks he's finally proven himself, even while throwing up blood and wondering if his dad's trying to kill him. Rin, on the other hand, is even more impressed with Kella now that he's convinced the king. She remembers to get him to the infirmary. Later, Kellen, a bit better, finishes the map in exactly 5 hours, just as he promised. The Demon Castle forces immediately start the plan. Mages put up illusion barriers around construction areas so enemies won't notice. They also magically change the land based on Keller's new plan. Kella thinks everything's going perfectly, like a game. Meanwhile, at the Celestial Guild camp, Herman, the guildmaster, gets a shocking message. He asks if demons are really changing the land. A subordinate confirms they found and activated an illusion spell. Herman's worried because he doesn't know what they can do with that magic. The messenger asks if they should attack, but Herman says no. He believes these enemy actions won't matter. He explains that in 3 days their most powerful squad, Takens, will be ready. Taken started this elite squad 12 years ago and it's finally complete. Herman is confident this squad won't lose to anyone, guaranteeing the Demon King will be completely defeated this time. He calculates Taken will arrive in 2 days, and the knights with him are set on killing the Demon King and ending his family line. They're ready to burn the castle and kill everyone. Among the squad, a red-haired woman, Commander Shrills, watches General Killman arrive and comments on his performance. When a knight asks if they can win, she confidently says yes. Shrills says Taken Squadron is different, and they're definitely killing the Demon King. Meanwhile, the Demon King is on his throne, thinking about his son's map. He thinks Kella wasn't bluffing because the plan makes sense. The map isn't perfect, but his son's effort surprised him, and Kella pushed himself to the limit to finish it. The king knows he can't act on impulse and decides to wait for the right moment. The next day is the last before the guild's attack, and he knows he has to end the war against the Celestials. At that moment, demon mages and builders are busy shaping the ground and getting things ready. Kella watches, thinking everything's going as planned. He finds this more challenging than making game maps, because he can actually change the real world. His only job now is to wait for the battle. Then the big day arrives. On the Celestial Guild field, Alkin and his squad are ready. He tells Hermann it's time to kill the Demon King. Hermann immediately gives the go-ahead, believing they're ready to win. Taken's super pumped. But then something falls from the sky in front of them. It's a small magical light that quickly turns into something. The commander realizes it's a trap, but it's too late. An explosion hits everyone. Despite the intense attack, both sides react and no one gets hurt. But that explosion is actually the Demon King himself appearing in front of everyone. Hours earlier, his son Kel had explained that he'd turned off an old magic barrier that stopped magic in demon territory. Now, the Demon King could teleport freely without enemies knowing. When the king asked if he could teleport right to the enemy camps, Kel said that was insane, throwing himself alone into their base. Tarm also warned it was too dangerous, even for him. Hell, another person there asked if they were doubting the king's power, and they both denied it. They said they were worried he hadn't fully healed from his injuries. Even so, the king told everyone to shut up and said he'd made his decision. Now, in the present, the Demon King stands before the Heavenly Guild's squad, planning to kill them all. He's gathered so much magic that the whole area is under immense pressure, making even strong warriors sweat and back away. Still, Talkan doesn't hesitate, determined to end the Demon King. His companions bravely charge forward, but the king's power is overwhelming and a battle of total destruction starts. Meanwhile, Kella is on top of the Demon Castle Tower, watching everything and focusing the remaining forces. He declares all preparations are done and orders the army to attack. Immediately, troops head for the center where the king is fighting. Monstrous creatures pop out of the ground as part of the ambush, attacking Celestial Guild warriors from everywhere. Kella thinks everything's going perfectly, but then Sarah and TM come up behind him. Sarah, coldly, says she still doesn't get how Kella did all this, but not everything's working out as he planned. TM, right next to him, says Kella overstepped and he can't stay there anymore. Kella didn't expect this betrayal. Before he can react, Tarm attacks his stomach with a weapon, saying it's the perfect time for Caldera to finish him. Caldera rushes forward and decapitates Ella with a precise blow. They laugh as his body falls, saying without his head, even Ella's regeneration won't work. As his head hits the ground, Ella's still thinking this might be the end. His body drops hard and his head rolls to the edge of the tower. Kodira then comments they finally got rid of that guy. TM says it's time to help their dad. But shockingly, Kodira stabs TM in the back with a hidden dagger. TM, wounded, doesn't fall immediately and recognizes Kodira is using a forbidden weapon of their mother's. Sarah replies she's a demon and doesn't care about rules. Weapons are for using. Tarm asks if she's serious, and Sarah says if she kills him, she'll be the only real heir. Enraged, Tarm charges her, and Sarah swears she'll finish him quickly. They start fighting violently on the tower. Meanwhile, Kella is still alive, completely shocked, wondering how demons could be so cruel to betray and kill without thinking. He never imagined he'd die like this, but then the ground under his body breaks, and Rin emerges from a secret tunnel, trembling but determined. She picks up Kella's head and puts it back on his body, trying to control her panic. On the battlefield, demonic portals are opening and coordinated attacks show demons know human strategies in advance. The Celestial Guild is totally overwhelmed, not knowing how to handle the monsters and magic. Then the Talon dragon roars, destroying everything with fire, and flies straight at the Demon King with a powerful attack. But the king doesn't hesitate. He leaps at the dragon, grabs its neck and rips its head off in one move, throwing the remains like they're nothing. The Taken squad commander is terrified and screams for everyone to fire at the Demon King, but while they try to organize, the demon army keeps coming. Among them is Hell, standing calmly, watching with his arms crossed. The commander asks if they hit Hell, but realizes something's wrong. Hell's body starts changing, becoming huge and scary. He's activating his most powerful form. Celestial Guild members are frozen with fear, and the commander says this is just like the old books describe. Shrills confirms it, saying it's the Demon King's final form. Even with Shrills yelling commands to focus and not be scared, the warriors are clearly shaken. The Demon King's overwhelming presence weighs on them all, and even Commander Tal Khan can barely move from fear or the pressure. The Demon King thinks that Kella's plan has one weak spot. There's no guaranteed escape route even though all forces are in the enemy's base. But that won't stop him. He's the Demon King and doesn't care about being trapped. However, Kella already thought of this. What matters now is wiping out all humans. Hell starts gathering even more magic, creating a density that can be felt everywhere. The severely wounded Talon Squad commander screams that he'll give his all in his final form, and everyone should be ready to die to stop the Demon King from destroying the guild. When Hell fully activates his final form, the power is so immense it can be seen from the horizon, beyond the castle walls. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels, Rin is still desperately trying to reattach Keller's head. Trembling and crying, she keeps repeating it has to work. She remembers when Kella's arm was torn off, and even though she was grossed out, she just put it back when he told her to. It regenerated perfectly then. Now, the head is a much bigger challenge. Rin hesitates, saying it could be more dangerous, but carefully proceeds. A few moments later, it works, and his body responds. Kella quickly puts his plan into action, telling Rin to find Tilder's servant and tell her exactly what he said. Later, Rin finds Sarah's servant, and following Kella's orders says he plans to kill Sarah during the battle while the Demon King is busy fighting the guilds. Sarah's servant is surprised and asks how. Rin says it would be the perfect chance for Dara to cut off Kella's head, because then he'd surely die, since his regeneration doesn't work if his head is separated. As Rin watches Kella's motionless body with his reattached head, she trembles, thinking everything is happening just as he planned, but she's still terrified he might have actually died. Just then, Kella opens his eyes and, looking annoyed, asks who she's calling an idiot. Rin is totally surprised. She didn't think he'd survive this time. She realizes his regeneration was weakened by weapons with mana, like the S-rank dagger. But it doesn't matter, he survived and his plan is still working. Rin is so relieved, she hugs him tightly, saying she really thought he was dead. Ella blushes, confused by her actions. He slowly pushes her away and says he'll continue the plan since he survived. At that moment, he starts undoing the contract between him and Rin, freeing her from being a servant. Rin is shocked to be free, but decides to keep following him. She remembers promising to be his friend, not just a servant, when they were little. That memory makes her even more emotional, and despite her new freedom, she declares she wants to stay with Kella as long as she's not left behind. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Taken's commander is severely wounded. He watches the Demon King, missing an arm, still fighting like an unstoppable monster. For the commander, this is the true Demon King, a living disaster no human can stop. No matter how powerful his attacks, Hell remains silent, observing the battlefield and thinking almost all enemies are dead. He realizes there are no more soldiers around him either. The fight has reached its limit, with both sides devastated, and it all depends on the few still standing. He thinks of his children and worries they won't make it, but he quickly decides not to be disappointed, as this battle was always his alone, and he'll use every last bit of magic to fight till the end. Meanwhile, Keller runs toward the battlefield, thinking he's finally found a way out and will escape the castle and be free. However, Rin magically blocks an incoming attack, explaining she smells blood. Disguised mages are hiding in the walls, waiting to intercept the Demon King's children trying to escape. Kella is shocked they knew about the secret passage. The mages confirm they can't let any of the Demon King's relatives escape and start casting spells at them. Rin positions herself to defend, saying she'll hold them off while Kella flees, but he replies she can't do it alone, knowing she only has basic defense magic and can barely cast offensive spells. Even so, she keeps fighting, and Kella understands Rin is sacrificing herself for him. Kella, disgusted, refuses to flee and forcefully shoves Rin away so she won't die. He tells her if she really wants to follow him, she shouldn't die in front of him, because that would just make him angrier. The mages mock him, saying he's trapped and a medium-level spell is enough to kill him since he's known as the weakest demon. But Kella thinks his body has always been shy, never used its true powers or shown its real strength, so he decides this is the moment to prove everyone wrong. He easily blocks the enemy's magic with his own magic. Rin is shocked by his power, and even the Celestial Guild mages are amazed. Kel then quickly charges the first mage, slams his head into the ground, and crushes him with his magic, saying if they thought he was weak, they were wrong and will now confirm their sources in the afterlife. The mage can't even breathe, and his head is destroyed by the magic, completely wiped out. Rin watches in silence, disbelieving he's beating Celestial Guild mages with just his own magic. The other mages yell, "It's impossible!" because all their info says Kella has no combat power, but Kella proves them wrong. The remaining mages realize they have no choice but to use high-class magic and decide to cast the Spear of Light spell, even though it's super risky and needs all their magic at once. If they fail, they both die. Even so, they cast it together, and Rin, already weak, realizes she can't handle that power. Then Keller is pierced by 2 spears of light, but Rin protects him from one with her body, even though she's also impaled and can't move. She apologizes to her master for not protecting him completely. The wizards say the plan worked perfectly, and it's the end for both of them. One even suggests playing with Rin, calling her a little beauty. But she, even wounded, tells that guy to get away, knowing what humans do to capture demons. The wizard ignores her and says he'll have fun with her soon. Kella angrily thinks that even the humans in this world treat others like objects. The wizard then says he'll kill the Demon King's kid first. Kella, almost unconscious, thinks the castle exit is so close, but he might really die now. When all seems lost, Rin screams his name. At that moment, Keller feels something strange, like a force coming toward him. And then he sees his father, the Demon King. Hell asks Dune, confused, if the battle's over and if his plan failed. But then he hears his father's voice, saying he fought countless times in his mind, considering all possibilities and futures until that exact moment. Keller doesn't quite get it. Hell explains that Sarah has no compassion for other demons, so she can't be a queen, and Tarm has no ambition to be king. So even if for a short time he's sure his son Ella is the best choice to continue the throne's line, Keller replies he thinks it's a mistake, but it's too late. In his last act, Hell transfers all his remaining magic to Kella, revealing the Demon King can pass on his power to his family. Before he dies, Kella is in shock, not understanding what's happening, and asks what his father's doing. But Hell only thinks his son shouldn't mourn his death, but act like a true demon, facing the world without hesitation. All that's left on the battlefield is the Demon King's head, marking the end of his life. General Killman died, sacrificing himself, leaving only Commander Seals and a few human soldiers alive. When they realize the Demon King is dead, the humans celebrate, thinking they won. However, at that very moment, Keller gets all the magic from his father, and the impact is so strong that the spears of light break off his body and Rin's too. She asks what's happening while the mages panic, unable to understand how his magic increased so much overnight. Kel wonders if his father is really dead, but quickly understands Hell's plan worked to the end. The mages realize they're out of magic and think about running. But Ella tells Rin to get out of the way, knowing he now has his father's pure darkness, a power so intense it seems to eat everything around it. The mages tell him not to come closer, calling him a demon. This reminds Keller of their disgusting words to Rin. Enraged, he charges with a punch so powerful it kills both mages at once, crushing them. He thinks they, the humans, look like the real demons. Rin is shocked, realizing this is the Demon King's power. But Keller knows his body won't last long with so much energy. He asks Rin if she can walk, and despite her injuries, she says yes, calling him her young master. Kella then says they can leave. He thinks that thanks to Hell's sacrifice, he escaped that cursed castle. Then Kella finds himself in beautiful green plains, and for a moment, he thinks he's finally free. He thinks he can go anywhere, live as he wants, and build the life he desires. But suddenly, a strange magic surrounds his body. Rin recognizes it's a teleportation spell. Kella doesn't hesitate and tells her to hold his hand so they can go together. Soon after, they're both teleported like a comet to a very distant realm, a beautiful and totally different place. Kella wonders where they ended up. Rin is impressed by the scenery and comments she didn't know Kella could teleport. But Kella explains he didn't do it. It seems like an emergency spell, something pre-programmed, maybe by his father to protect his children if he died. Only then does Rin realize her wounds are completely healed. She figures 3 days passed while they were unconscious in space, and this was definitely a teleportation and healing spell meant to save them. Rin thoughtfully realizes their father actually cared about his children. Then Rin asks if the Demon King really died, and Kella says yes. He thinks everything happened just as his father planned. Rin then says he should become the next Demon King, but Kella doesn't get why. Rin explains she noticed a change in him that makes him the perfect successor, and from now on, she'll do her best as his servant until he takes that title. Kella thinks she's got it all wrong, especially since he doesn't even have any powers right now. Suddenly, Rin is startled. She realizes they're in the magical country of Arsal, a land known for training human demon hunters. They see a huge banner celebrating the Demon King's death, cheered by the people of Tala. Kella wonders why they were sent here of all places. He knows they're in big danger if discovered, but Rin remembers she can use a transformation spell to make them look human. Kella agrees it's a good idea, since she knows the spell. He then asks Rin to explain everything she knows about the place. Rin says Arsal is a small island country east of Tala. It's blessed by a legendary creature, Watergore, who lives in the nearby seas and makes the country's magic super powerful. Because of this, the strongest magicians on the continent are born there, and they've been demon enemies for centuries. However, even with all their strength, Arsal is still politically controlled by Tua. Kel wonders why his father would send him to such a dangerous place, but Rin reminds him they're in the capital and need to escape ASAP. Kel says escaping needs planning, and she knows that. He thinks to achieve his dream in this world, he needs to master magic, because everything there, from simple buildings to advanced structures, is powered by spells. Even Tawa relies on magic. Kella believes this risky place could also be where he learns what he needs to change his destiny. He thinks he might be able to create new dungeons like in the game. But suddenly, Rin's stomach rumbles, loudly, interrupting his thoughts. She suggests they grab a snack. Later, Rin is chowing down on a famous magical meal in eye roll, saying how delicious it is. She gets so excited she orders another serving. Kella thinks Rin seems a bit too excited for someone who was so down about being there. She suggests they hit up a nearby bar, and he agrees. At the bar, there's a huge party celebrating the Demon King's death. The party leader is Shrills, commander of Alcon's army, and most people are drunk. Rin and Kella are there pretending to celebrate to blend in. They drink with everyone, trying not to draw attention. Kella thinks a break like this isn't so bad. However, Shrills notices them and finds them interesting. Later, Kella is puking in an alley while Rin laughs, saying he got too carried away. She comments he clearly can't handle alcohol, and they were there celebrating his dad's death. Kella says she started drinking first, but suddenly the mood changes. People are running through the streets yelling about a new S-ranked mission. Everyone's shocked because the Demon King was the only ranked mission ever. It's too weird for another to pop up. Rin pulls Kella along, saying they need to see this. The crowd gathers around the new poster, and they're shocked to see Kella's face as the new target. He's identified as the Demon King's son and the last one to eliminate. Kella almost asks aloud why him. Rin covers his mouth before anyone hears. She pretends he's just drunk. Some people comment he's the weakest demon kid and this mission isn't even S rank, more like B rank, and that he'll be easy to defeat. Kella thinks disguising himself will be harder now. He walks away with Rin, who almost calls him by his real name. She asks what to call him in public, and Kella quickly says, Shio. Rin thinks it's a bad name and asks where he got it, but Kella just tells her to shut up. Rin comments she didn't think they'd find out so quickly he was still alive. Kel says they need to get whatever they need from this country and leave ASAP. As they try to leave unnoticed, a woman watches them from the road. It's Shrills, who stops them and asks if there's a new S-rank mission. Kellen nods. Rin says they were just looking at the poster out of curiosity. Kel remembers they called Shrills Hope of Our Soul at the bar, so she must be super powerful. Shrills asks if the Demon King's son is really alive and complains demons don't know how to die properly. Kel thinks she's talking about him, but tries to stay calm. Rin comments that this Demon King's son might not even be that strong and shouldn't be a big deal to beat. But suddenly, Shrills puts her arms around both their shoulders. Shrills gets closer and asks if capturing that target would be a problem, even if it's the Demon King's son. Shrills replies she noticed them earlier and they smell weird. She directly asks if they're more than they seem. At that moment, Kella and Rin freeze, thinking they've been found out. But Shrills laughs and says they're probably just two travelers who haven't showered in days. She asks why they haven't washed, and they nervously pretend that's exactly it. Ella thinks they're safe for now. Later, he's chilling in a hot tub with sweets, wondering if the food is magical too. He's always dreamed of living in a game world, and it seems his dream came true. He even thinks this rest isn't bad. Meanwhile, Rin is super nervous, knowing she'd die if discovered. This is because she's sharing a bathtub with Shrills. The commander asks if the tub is great, and Rin nervously giggles, yes. Of course, Shrills notices her tension and comments she looks like a demon about to be caught. Rin tries to play it off ironically, saying, "Imagine if I were." Shrills, thinking Rin needs to relax, uses a holy spell to calm her. Rin panics internally, knowing holy magic is bad for demons and could even undo her transformation spell. As she tries to maintain her disguise, she desperately thinks her master needs to help her. But Kella's on the other side, totally calm, sipping tea in another tub. Trills, relaxed, tells Rin that after the Demon King's death, she feels like everything she did in her life was worth it. Inside, Rin just wants her to stop talking and let her leave. Shrills continues, telling her she was chosen to be a maid since birth. But Rin, trying to escape, interrupts, saying she needs to go to the bathroom and will be right back. Before letting her go, Shrills comments that she probably doesn't like the sacred scent much. Later, Rin finds Kella and says it couldn't have been worse. Kella, however, says he's much more relaxed after the bath. Rin complains it's not time to enjoy a bath since her disguise spell almost failed. Kella, surprised, asks what that means. Rin explains Shrills used a sacred scent near her, which can make demons lose their magic. It's advanced human magic and could have revealed her true form. Keller acknowledges it could have gone very wrong, but still says he's taking another shower before they leave. Rin impatiently insists they need to leave immediately. Just then, Shrills appears and asks if they're leaving already. Rin, trying to keep up the act, says she wants one more round in the bath with her, but then says it's time to go. Shrills, also nearby, asks if they really want to leave and says they should at least try the kingdom's magical food and drinks first. She celebrates while grabbing Kella, and Rin starts to lose patience. Meanwhile, a squad of magicians is gathering, having detected a demonic presence in that house. Specifically, the Demon King's son. They say it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and they need to capture him immediately. While the mages are getting ready to attack Kella, Rin and Shrills are trying an enchanted meal. Shrills comments the drink is made with sacred water. They like the taste, and Kelly says it's good. But as he keeps drinking, his body starts to burn. He got so caught up in the magical food he didn't expect side effects. The holy water is affecting his true nature. Shrills picks up the conversation from the bathtub. She tells them everything she's done in her life has been to kill the Demon King. She joined the Taken Squad and trained for years. She got a scar during one of the unit's tests. Rin, surprised, says she didn't notice it. Shrills replies there's an even worse one on her face. She moves her hair aside, revealing a large scar over her right eye, explaining she lost that eye. Everyone is shocked. Shrill says she uses magic to hide the scars because looking at them brings back the pain of her hard past. She explains that to join the Tolkien Squad, candidates had to prove they were the best. It was the only way to have a shot at killing the Demon King. They had to endure pain, push limits, and show this was their true goal. Shrill says she sacrificed her whole life for one purpose, to kill the Demon King. She then looks at them and asks what they've been doing all this time. She approaches Kella and comments he looks scarred too, but when she lifts his shirt, she sees nothing, surprised. She says his skin is so soft, he doesn't even look like he's been in a battle, not a single mark. Rin starts to panic, knowing being touched so carefully and closely could undo Kella's disguise spell. Then Shrills, with a sharper gaze, asks him directly if he's a demon. At that moment, Rin wonders if she knew all along. Before they can react, several rats appear and instantly turn into wizards. Even Shrills didn't expect this. Kella and Rin realize they're trapped and wonder how they got caught, but Shrills smiles and says the mage's visit was unexpected. The mages then confirm the guild's message was right and reveal Shrills was disguised all along. She was a traitor infiltrating their soul. Kella and Rin couldn't have predicted this. Kella starts to suspect the mages weren't after him, but Shrills. And this is confirmed when she admits they're right, and there's no reason to hide anymore. In fact, she revealed her identity herself. The magicians, now with confirmation, say they have her direct testimony and prepare to eliminate her. But Shrills doesn't back down. She declares she's an elite mage from the Tolkien squad, and a few of their mages won't beat her. Meanwhile, Rin is telling Kel they need to get out of there, and Kel is thinking this is becoming a much bigger problem than they imagined. Then a huge magical explosion happens. Rin can barely believe Shrill's magical power, who destroyed everything with one spell. Keller wonders if she protected them on purpose. The answer comes soon after, when Shrills reveals she always knew they were demons. There was no hiding it from her, because she was one too. With a firm look, Shrills introduces herself as Shrills Hel Khaldun, daughter of the Demon King Hel Khaldun himself. Both Kel and Rin are shocked, unable to believe it, but Shrills says there's no time for long explanations, so she decides to show them the truth, using memory transfer magic. She says she was born as an experiment, and after many failures, she was the first successful result, a demon who could hide her horns in demonic power. Ella can hardly believe he's standing in front of the Demon King's own daughter, and the king, in his living memory, confirms his blood runs through her veins. Shrills thinks about her life since birth, saying every day was hell. She went through painful experiments, saw many others die, and thought she'd suffer the same. But she survived, and now she understands it had a purpose. She was the Demon King's daughter. She declares it an honor to serve her lord. And the king responds by saying he'll bless her with a worthy name. He names her Shrills Khaldun and declares she'll be a spy infiltrating the human kingdom, bringing him info directly. Shrills thinks that as the Demon King's daughter, she can do anything. Later, she infiltrates the human kingdom, pretending to be captured by demons. Everyone pities her and welcomes her into their soul. This is how she becomes a spy for the Demon King. Over time, she learns to use AOL's magic and becomes more powerful. She endures hardships, overcomes obstacles, and eventually becomes the strongest member of Taken Squadron, AOL's elite force. After 15 years, she finally gets to see her father again. She wants to hug him and run away, but she knows she can't yet. She thinks the right moment is coming. Her mission is to secretly use magic to help her father kill Killman, defeat all enemies on the battlefield, and then return to the castle with him once everything's clear. Shrill's dream is to live with her father as the real Shrills Hel Khaldun. However, nothing goes as planned. Killman declares the Demon King surpassed all his expectations, being his most powerful opponent. But the king replies he doesn't need approval from a pathetic human like him. Angry, Killman says the king's arrogance will be his downfall. He then launches his final attack, the Spear of Heaven, and the Demon King responds with his final blow, the Flames of Shrills can barely react to their magical clash. At the moment of the huge explosion, Shrills hears her father's voice in her mind. He speaks directly to Shrills, telling her she's next in command and should guide the next Demon King, protecting him to the end, just like she did with him. That's how the battle ends and the Demon King dies. Shrills, shaken, watches her father die helplessly. After that, she has to go back to Tua and pretend to celebrate the death of her own father. After the ceremony, she decides to retire and return to their soul, her second home where it all began. She's getting used to the place again, but only to avenge her father's death. She declares her plan is to destroy Arcel first. Rin, still trying to understand, asks if she's really the Demon King's daughter. Kella, for his part, thinks the whole thing is a nightmare. He thought he'd already gotten rid of his siblings, even if they weren't blood. He never imagined another sister would suddenly appear. Shrills makes it clear she won't force them to join her. She wants them to understand one thing. Their soul is the most magical country in the world. The longer he stays there, the less hope the demon race will have. She says Keller will die soon if he stays too long. Keller realizes she's right. Even in games, mages are the most dangerous forces, and right now, he's the most obvious and threatened person in their soul. Outside, the mages say they clearly heard that explosion. They say the three of them won't get away with it and will use all their remaining magic to kill them. Keller is indignant, thinking those mages still believe him to be just human, yet are ready to attack him without hesitation. That's when he starts transforming back into his demonic form. Rin is totally shocked, but Keller says it's just self-defense. Shrills, however, is even more surprised to feel the energy coming from him because it's exactly the same as his father's, the Demon King's. So that night, an endless battle begins in Rin's eyes, but in reality, it's just a massacre. For Shrills, fighting in their soul is like fighting at home. She knows how to navigate just by feeling the ground. Unfortunately for humans, all important buildings, including government buildings and the Magic Academy, are destroyed. Keller himself uses the Demon King's magic to overpower the humans, who are drunk and vulnerable from the festival. With this teamwork, the magical land of Arsal is completely wiped out. There's absolutely nothing and no one left. At the end of it all, even the sky seems to be on fire. One of the mages even shouts that their soul would never fall easily and he'd never forgive the demons. But then he's burned by Shrills too. She says it's her speech because she's the one who can't forgive humans, and she'll start with Arsal. Then she'll overthrow Alcon, and finally she'll destroy Talule's entire empire, wiping them all out. Rin thinks that's impossible. Keller replies they've helped each other enough and it's time to split up, but Shrills tells him to wait. She looks at him and asks if he really thinks she wouldn't recognize him. She says he's called Dune, the Demon King's second son, right? Keller thinks there's no point in hiding it, so he nods, confirming it's him. Shrills asks if it's true because she was just guessing, and he confirms. She only suspected, but now she knows for sure. Then she explains that technically she's not the Demon King's daughter, but a kind of mutant made from his blood aura. Because of this, she can recognize anyone with the same blood, and since she was raised after Keller was born, he's technically her older brother. She then says she assumes he also wants revenge for his father, so they should stick together, not apart. Keller thinks revenge is what he really wants, but his desire is to leave. Shrills wonders if he really plans to run away, being the last direct descendant of the Demon King, the last child left by him. Rin thinks it might be better to go with her, because if they don't, she could really kill them. Ella replies that of course he wants revenge, and realizes he has little choice but to agree. Shrills then gets excited and says they can go together, burning everything they come across. Ella thinks he'll need to learn their soul's magic anyway, and currently the only person who can teach him is Shrills herself. Keller decides he can stay with Shrills for a while, using revenge as an excuse, and during that time, he'll treat her as an ally. As they walk away, a human maid, still alive, watches silently and thinks she needs to report this to the kingdom of Tua. Sometime later in Tua, an emergency message reaches the king, interrupting his banquet. The king asks what the message says. The messenger explains that Shrills from Talca Squadron is actually a demon, and Arsal tried to eliminate her. However, the messenger continues Khaldun, the Demon King's last son, appeared during the attack and destroyed their soul with her. The king is deeply shocked and asks if the Demon King's son really was an Arsal. The messenger confirms it, saying he probably has some connection with Shrills. The king is furious and declares this unacceptable. He says both Shrill and the Demon King's son are making a mockery of them. He orders them both killed immediately, and posters put up all over the kingdom offering rewards. Whoever kills Shrills will take her place in the Talcon squad. The Hayden messenger swears they'll both die. He approaches the Demon King's head, displayed like a museum piece, and thinks the king's cursed family line is still alive. He swears he'll burn every last one of them. Later, the king's advisor summons the messenger, who informs him General Killian should have the message by now. He asks him to return as soon as possible. Hayden thinks about Killian, acknowledging he's the best knight, even better than Kilman. To kill Kella and Shrills, they need Killian. Meanwhile, Kilman himself is informed his brother Kilman died, sacrificing himself to kill the Demon King. Kilman asks if the Demon King is really dead, and if so, why they still need him. OL's messenger explains they need him to hunt down Kelly Khaldun, the Demon King's last son. Kilman replies he doesn't care what others want. What matters is that demons killed his brother. Meanwhile, Keller is shocked by what he's seeing. He can't believe he has to eat that weird food, Shrills comments. He doesn't need to eat if he's full, because for her, it's not even enough. Rin asks Shrill's secret for not getting fat, and she replies, if you go in quickly and come out quickly, you won't get fat. Rin thinks that's brilliant. Kella also thinks it's good to have a sister who doesn't want to kill him. Unlike Kodera or TM, he's afraid Shrills is also jealous, so he asks her if she has anything against him for being the Demon King's biological son. Shrill says of course she feels like killing him. She's also the daughter of that same man whom she always loved and respected, so she can't hate him for that. Even so, since he has Hell's blood, she feels she needs to protect him. Keller wonders if, unlike his other siblings, she really wants to protect him. Drills declares that from now on she'll risk her own life to keep him alive since he's the Demon King's last son. Kella is even embarrassed and thanks her. Rin, watching, wonders why he turned red and tries to get closer, even offering her a thigh of meat, but it doesn't work well. Rin says she'll protect him too. Keller thought it was pretty awesome that they liked his plan since he just made it up on the spot. Shrills said the first step was to get an army, and she knew just the demon to call. They were both super hyped about starting a war, and Keller realized they were really digging his idea. He figured it'd be great for him too, finally getting to build the perfect world he'd always imagined but never actually made. Keller asked Shrills if she knew any cool, reliable demons. They needed to learn a lot about the area first. Shrills thought that was smart and knew someone who could help. Later, while they were traveling, Keller started learning magic from Shrill's home, which totally made Rin jealous because he was getting so close to her sister. Rin thought Shrills was a bit weird. Keller thought the magic would be hard, but thanks to his Demon King blood, he got it super fast. He was amazed he could do magic with his bare hands and felt like he was getting closer to his goal. 4 days later, Shrill said they were almost there. Rin wondered if a demon could really live somewhere so isolated. Shrills explained that it wasn't always like that until those awful Tolkiens ambushed them. Shrills told everyone to stop, but then a demon charged, thinking they were Tolkiens, and stabbed Shrills in the shoulder. She didn't even flinch, like she felt no pain. She just said she knew it would happen because the demons saw it coming. Rin asked why she was acting like that and not telling the truth right away, but Keller told her to chill because he trusted Shrill's plan. The demons kept attacking Shrills, and she just stood there, apologizing and taking all their anger silently, like it was helping them feel better. One demon recognized her pose as a special sign only Earth demons knew. Shrills then said she was a fellow demon and apologized for everything. The demons were like, "Are you really a demon? We saw you with Alcan last time." Keller stepped in and said it was true, but Shrills was telling the truth now. He firmly stated she was under his protection as the last direct descendant of the old Demon Kingdom. Feeling the Demon King's power in Keller, the demons trusted him. They all knelt, calling him their young master. They said they were the demons of the land and honored Keller's power. Rin mumbled that she always knew there were good demons. Keller looked at the awesome demon city in front of him and thought maybe building an army wouldn't be so hard after all. The Earth demons welcomed him warmly, preparing food, a welcome ceremony, and tons of gifts. Keller noticed this place looked way different from the demon castle in their old home. This city was built without magic, but it was massive and made of super high-quality stuff. He was really impressed by how big it was and how many demons lived there, especially since it was all hidden underground. Keller told Shrills she was right. The Earth Demon's skills would be super important for what they needed. Shrills just smirked, saying he hadn't seen anything yet, because there was a perfect warrior they still needed to get. Keller was definitely interested. Shrills told him that the Alcon group found this city on their way to the Demon King's castle. They wrecked everything, stormed the place, and killed a ton of Earth demons, all on General Killman's orders. To make it even worse, Killman also burned the surrounding forest, nearly wiping out the Earth demons. But in all that chaos, a warrior stepped up and protected his people to the very end. He even made a deal with Killman, and even Killman respected that. When Keller heard this, he was shocked and wanted to know who this warrior was. Then his name was revealed: Douglas, son of the Earth demons. Kilman was actually interested in Douglas and even said if Douglas had been born human, a lot of problems would have been avoided. He told his guys to stop fighting and left to continue his journey to the demon castle. Douglas was so shocked he didn't know what to do. Shrills said Douglas's bravery saved his people, and Douglas could barely believe it. Back in the present, Rose said Douglas didn't run away and tried to save every single child of his people. Rin was really impressed and said that warrior sounded trustworthy. She thought a demon warrior with that much heart would be super important to them. Keller said he wanted to find Douglas, but one of the demons said they should look for someone else. Still, Keller insisted, saying he wanted to be taken to Douglas and asked where he was. Later, in a blacksmith shop, Keller asked Douglas if he dared to disobey him, and Douglas just said that even though Keller was the Demon King's son, that didn't mean he had to obey him. Keller asked what would happen if he used his power against him, and Douglas replied that he'd die fighting. When Keller asked why he wanted to stay there so badly, Douglas said he was born and raised there, he had to protect his home, and he couldn't leave it. Keller thought Douglas was really stubborn, just like everyone said. Douglas just apologized. Keller remembered that even in his past life, he tried hard to get Douglas as an ally and failed. He realized he might not be able to get him this time either. While thinking, he looked around and noticed the city's buildings were super efficient. He really wanted to have one of those demons with so much knowledge working for him. Meanwhile, Shrills and Rin were totally wasted, praising the Earth Demon liquor, saying it was amazing. Keller, seeing this, got annoyed, thinking he was working hard while they were just getting drunk. But then he tried some too, and was surprised, remarking that it was way tastier than beer. Another demon showed up and said everyone was drunk enough, so Keller asked them to prepare rooms for everyone to rest. Later, in bed, Keller was so sleepy he didn't even notice the Earth demons sneaking up on him. They were there to kill him. One of them swung an axe at Keller's neck but was shocked when he dodged it. Keller stood up and said he was sure of something now. The demons asked how he did that if he looked asleep, and disgusted, one said that Bastard was a coward and tried to kill him again. Keller thought that at first he was suspicious of a few things. He wondered why Douglas was making things that weren't weapons, like handcuffs that clearly weren't for orcs, meaning they could only be for him or his allies. He also realized people were always tracking and watching him, and one person was constantly following him. From then on, Keller started paying more attention to everything and noticed a faint magic shield in the city. So subtle, he only sensed it because of his Demon King mana. Plus, there was another weird thing. Kassad said Douglas was protecting not just the Earth demons, but also the Dark Elves. But Keller hadn't seen any Dark Elves in the village until then. That's when he figured everything out. So, Keller quickly attacked all the demons around him. Then he confronted Douglas, saying he knew Douglas had promised Kilman he wouldn't let the Dark Elves be killed, but he also wouldn't hand them over to anyone. This meant Douglas wasn't protecting the elves out of kindness, but just because he didn't want them taken from him. Douglas was shocked and asked how Keller knew all this. Keller then demanded he drop the shield right away. Later, Keller took Douglas hostage and figured, as he expected, everyone was worried about Douglas, otherwise his plan wouldn't work. The elder asked if Douglas had really messed up his mission, and Douglas apologized. That's when Keller yelled for no one to move a muscle, because if anyone got close, Douglas would die. The elder called Keller a coward. Later, near the shield, Keller ordered it to be opened. He put a crystal into a small opening, and instantly the whole truth was revealed. All the Dark Elves were imprisoned behind the shield, like they were living in a cage. Keller thought the situation was even worse than he imagined. Then Shrills came running and confirmed he was right. As soon as she saw it, she was horrified. Keller told Shrills to get the Dark Elves out of there as fast as possible, and asked her to show him their memories using magic. Shrills explained that memory transfer magic was possible, but it wouldn't be as clear as using her own memories. Still, Keller insisted, so she touched one of the Dark Elves and put her memories directly into Keller's mind. In the vision, he saw true hell. That elf's mother had been forced to have her, and everyone born there went through the same thing. From a young age, the elves were raised in captivity. Among the children, those who pleased the nobles were chosen and taken away. They were sold for a lot of money to the Earth demons. Some captured adults from outside told stories about the world, about the blue sky and ocean, and about a free world where you could travel, things they'd never know there. If everyone there could make one last wish before they died, it would be that at least their children got a chance to live outside. When Keller saw this, he was furious. He said those pathetic creeps would pay, and he'd kill all the Earth demons. Then he turned to Douglas and punched him so hard it sent him flying and almost destroyed his body. Shrills asked how Douglas could do that to kids. Douglas replied coldly that dark elves were rare and humans had a huge desire for them. He said they were a naturally loved race, perfect for being held captive. Douglas was asked how he could do such a thing to other demons. He just replied that with the Demon King gone, his kind needed to find a way to survive, even if it meant doing stuff like this. Keller, totally fuming, gathered his magic. He remembered how he was treated badly by his own parents in his past life, but he knew these kids had it way worse. He couldn't let it keep happening. Keller told Shrills and Rin they'd finish what Killman couldn't. Shrills immediately agreed, saying she'd kill all the demons who betrayed their own kind. Rin chimed in too, saying they couldn't be forgiven, and she wanted to clean up that place of the Earth demons. But Douglas quickly called for backup, knowing it was 3 against many. The Earth demons got ready to attack. Rin said they were way outnumbered, and Shrills wondered how they dared to fight the Demon King's son. Even so, the 3 didn't back down and kept blocking attacks. Rin declared that Keller would be the next king. Right then, Keller easily blocked Douglas's attack. He realized this wasn't a game anymore, it was his life. He decided he would change things with his own power. He kicked Douglas right in the face, thinking things were different now. He wouldn't hesitate anymore. Meanwhile, the Dark Elves watched silently. One of them asked if they were there to help. The Dark Elves started arguing. Some said they should help, but others were scared, saying it was too risky. However, one elf firmly stated that if they lost this fight, they'd be tortured again. He was clearly scarred by what he'd been through, and Keller could see it in his eyes. He then looked at Douglas and asked if he could hear it, the screams of pain, the suffering they had caused. Keller said no one would get away with doing that to the elves, but Douglas still had one last secret weapon. Douglas swallowed a strange pill, and soon after, all the other Earth demons did the same. They knew if they lost this fight, they'd lose everything. They were eating a special kind of Earth ore. Rin was shocked, saying she thought it was just a myth. That ore, which looked like crystals, made their bodies grow super strong, boosting their physical abilities dozens of times over. Soon, Douglas and the other demons started getting huge. Their bodies changed, looking like brutal, muscular orcs. Keller knew his demon energy alone wouldn't be enough to fight them now, but he also couldn't use all his power because he still couldn't control the Demon King's inherited magic properly. Even so, Douglas charged to finish him off. Keller saw the danger and got ready, but suddenly, roots burst from the ground and completely trapped Douglas. It was Shrill's magic saving her ally. One of the Dark Elves, named Wood, stood up and declared he would never be tortured again. The other elves were stunned, asking if Wood had really faced Douglas. Meanwhile, Douglas, furious, asked how Wood dared to get in his way, threatening to torture her to death. But before he could do anything, Douglas felt Keller's power coming. Keller said that would never happen again and shot an arrow of demonic mana right through Douglas's stomach. He looked at the elf and asked if his name was really Wood. He said he liked her and she'd be welcome by his side. Douglas, though hurt, said Wood was only alive because of him, but Keller replied he wouldn't let anyone be tortured anymore. Douglas then exploded in rage, broke free from the roots, and started growing even bigger. His body was even more monstrous now. He hit Keller with such a powerful blow that it sent him flying across the cave. Keller felt how strong the earth magic was. Douglas then charged straight for Wood, grabbed her neck, and promised to rip her head off right there. Wood could barely breathe. Keller realized Douglas was out of control, more interested in killing Wood than fighting him. Seeing there was no time, Keller decided to attack from a distance. But at that exact moment, his mind was pulled into another place. He found himself facing the energy left by his father, the Demon King. The demon energy called Keller an idiot, saying he had lost so much power that he was now standing there talking to his own thoughts. It warned him he needed to act fast. Keller agreed and asked if there was any way to save Wood. The energy replied that he wasn't ready to use all the power he had inherited, because his body and mind needed to be perfectly in sync. Only then would he learn to control everything. Keller said he didn't want any more explanations. He just wanted to know how to use it. The energy agreed and said there was something he could use right now. Before vanishing, the energy called him Kong Chi, his real name, and said it would see him soon. Keller was surprised because he didn't know how that entity knew his full name. Then, suddenly, he was back in reality. He had Hell's demon fire bow in his hands. With it, Keller thought he could protect Wood. He yelled for Wood to duck her head. Douglas, caught off guard, hadn't expected it. Wood, even without strength, used her own magic to defend herself. Keller then said this was the end of Douglas's cruel actions and shot an arrow of demonic fire straight into his face. The arrow hit Douglas with full force, and when the fire touched his body, he was completely burned, burning alive in front of everyone. Keller watched intently as the blue flames ate away at Douglas and thought it was a direct hit. There was no way he could have survived it. Douglas's body was reduced to ashes in the demon fire, and Keller, still shaken, wondered who that entity was he had met inside his own mind. Meanwhile, the other Earth demons were still standing and ready to fight. Shrills commented that she couldn't use all her power there because it would also hit the Dark Elves. But Keller replied that she didn't need to worry because he would handle it quickly himself. Then, without hesitation, he fired a shower of flaming arrows with his demonic mana. The arrows hit the enemies with such force they killed them instantly. Shrills was surprised to see Keller using real demon fire arrows. She wondered if he had become even more powerful. Rin also realized that Keller now had long-range attacks and thought this would be super useful for the upcoming battles. Later, after all the Earth demons were defeated, Shrills commented that the Earth ores were much more powerful than she'd imagined. Rin said she hadn't known that the ore used up the lifespan of those who took it. Keller, thinking about this, decided they definitely needed to look into these crystals more. Then Keller turned to all the gathered Dark Elves and firmly told them that from that moment on, they were free. This time, they wouldn't be captured again, and they were free to live as they pleased. The elves were shocked, not knowing if they could believe it, and asked if they really were free. Keller confirmed it, saying they could leave that awful place and take their children to safety. With tears in their eyes, all the elves knelt and bowed to Keller, thanking him for his kindness. Shrills commented that at least the whole mission wasn't pointless, but admitted she felt betrayed by the Earth demons. Rin replied it was a real shame, but there was nothing more to be done about the past. Keller then approached Wood and asked if she had been born there or captured. Wood replied she had been captured. Keller asked if she had any family left, and Wood replied no. Sadly, no one was left. Keller looked Wood in the eye and said that in that case, she could come with them. He said they needed someone who knew the area and could guide them. But Wood replied she wasn't a true Earth demon, nor was she as good at navigating as the others. She said maybe she wouldn't be that helpful to Keller. Keller, however, told her not to worry about that. He explained that elves are naturally connected to nature, and besides, she had already shown she was strong and brave enough to face danger. He said that courage was more important than any skill, and asked if Wood wanted to go with them. Wood was amazed by Keller. She thought she didn't even remember what her parents looked like anymore because she had been abandoned and then captured, living all that time in that hell. She thought she would die there in that cursed place. Then, with tears in her eyes, Wood asked Keller if she could really leave that place, if she could really follow him. Keller said she wouldn't just be following, she'd be by his side. So he helped her up and suggested they get out of there fast. Later, outside the Earth Demon village, the now free Dark Elves started saying goodbye to Keller. Keller was worried because many of them had never seen the outside world before. However, he was relieved to realize that being so connected to nature, they would quickly adapt anywhere would be better than where they were before. Wood also took the chance to say goodbye to her people. Shortly after, Rin was already nagging Keller, reminding him he needed to obey more, to which Wood replied she would do exactly what Rin wanted. Soon, Shrill said the first thing they should do now was find a riverbank. Wood, for her part, said she could smell water coming from a certain direction. Trills praised her, saying she did a good job, and Wood happily thanked her. Rin asked Shrills why exactly they needed a river, and Shrills explained they couldn't just keep walking, they needed something that would make traveling easier. By finding a river, maybe they could get something useful to continue their journey. Rin then joked she wanted to catch a dragon. Shrills jokingly replied that was crazy, sarcastically asking if she wanted a unicorn too. Wood then started heading in the direction she had pointed out earlier, and to everyone's surprise, there really was a river there. Near the bank were 2 unicorns drinking water, and flying over the river was a gliding dragon. Shrills was shocked because she was absolutely sure that neither dragons nor unicorns existed there. Meanwhile, in the Earth Demon village, there was still one last demon desperately begging for help. Clay claimed this was indeed the last survivor, and earlier she had been talking about it with the white Tolkien people. Deed asked if her tracking spell wasn't working right, and Clay replied she wasn't sure why, but it was sensing several individuals in different directions. Kaka commented in disbelief that it was impossible for the Demon King to have left so many children like that. He then asked if there was really no way to directly identify who Keller was among them. Unfortunately, Clay said no. A commented worriedly, wondering what they would do now since they couldn't waste time on such a long and uncertain hunt. Kilman stated he thought there was no other choice but to hunt down all the demons scattered across the continent. He asked Clay where they should start. She replied that she alone could teleport to distant places, making scouting easier. Deed thought this was great because then they could kill her while she did the tracking. Determined, Clay then stood up and used the spell, disappearing immediately. Deed was impressed by how fast she acted. Kilman, however, said it was time to start killing the demons. Back in the present, Clay confirmed she was feeling the energy of Keller's Demon King's children in that place, and asked the last surviving demon if the one responsible for all this had passed through. The demon replied yes, saying it was him who had killed the other demons. When Clay asked where he was now, the demon couldn't answer, only begged to be saved. Without hesitation, Clay killed him on the spot, saying he was no longer useful if he couldn't provide that information. Determined, she said that now the only option was to follow the energy trail to hunt down Keller. After several days of travel, the group finally reached the river mentioned earlier. Shrills commented that it had taken them a long time, but pointed out how impressive Wood's tracking skills were, worthy of the elves. While Rin warned Keller not to get cocky, as he was still a beginner, he just shyly apologized. Keller then commented that he was very hungry since they hadn't eaten properly over the last few days. Rin immediately offered to catch something for them, as she was pretty good at it. However, before she could start, several fish began jumping out of the river and right into the water. Everyone was surprised until they realized it was Wood controlling the water flow with her natural power, making the fish come straight to her hands. Shrills commented that what Wood did was really impressive, and Rin, hearing this, started to think she was falling behind the group. Trying to feel useful, she suggested she could at least light the fire, but Shrills said she didn't need to. Hearing this, Rin got sad and started to feel completely useless. Later, when everyone had eaten, they commented that Wood had done an excellent job fishing. Wood, noticing Rin wasn't eating, asked if everything was okay with her, but Rin was clearly down and had no appetite. Shrills then joked that if she wasn't going to eat, he would take her portion himself. Seeing Rin's discouragement, Keller realized how sad she was, so he said that just fish wasn't enough for him, and asked if someone could get some fruit too. At that moment, Rin quickly stood up, excited at the opportunity, saying she would find the most delicious fruit herself. When Wood offered to get the fruit, claiming it would be too quick for her to find, Keller interrupted by saying Rin could do it herself. Rin, now very excited, confirmed she would do it, promising to bring the best possible fruit for her master. Shrills observed Rin's reaction and commented quietly that she was a very simple woman to understand. Soon after, he discreetly asked Keller if he had suggested it just to cheer her up, but Keller calmly denied it, saying he really wanted fruit. Curious about the unusual situation, Shrills asked Wood if there really were unicorns in the area. Wood replied yes, she had felt the presence of one, but it was still very young. Shrills then thought that if there were unicorns, maybe there really was a dragon, as Rin had mentioned earlier. However, Shrills still insisted that there were no dragons there. Meanwhile, Rin was already super excited, running through the forest looking for fruit to please her master, until she finally found a fruit tree. To reach the highest fruit, she leaned on something strange, which, to her surprise, began to move slowly. When she looked down, she realized with terror that she was standing on the head of a huge dragon. She was so frightened, she almost had a heart attack right there. Back at the camp, unaware of what was happening to Rin, Keller asked Wood if she could really feel the Earth's energy naturally. Wood said yes, though it was hard to explain. She could just sense nature's energy nearby. Keller thought it sounded like a game map he knew. Shrills then mentioned this ability would be super helpful for finding dungeons, but Wood clarified the range wasn't that big, so maybe it wouldn't be as useful as they thought. Intrigued, Keller asked if there was a way to make it stronger through training. Wood replied she'd heard of something like that, but it would require eating a clairvoyant stone from a dragon that lived for over 1,000 years. Only then could her tracking ability increase by 100 times. Shrills gasped in amazement, saying a 100-fold increase would be incredibly impressive. Shrills also commented that finding a dragon wasn't easy, and beating one would be even harder. Keller asked if dragons were really that strong. Shrills said yes, explaining that if there were a food chain in nature, dragons would definitely be at the very top. They were the most powerful predators. Plus, dragons naturally hated demons. Oddly, only humans could tame them, and even then, only the strongest humans could do it. Keller found this a bit funny since he considered humans weaker, yet they could control such creatures. Shrills agreed, saying he'd never really understood dragons either. At this point, Keller asked Shrills what exactly a dragon clairvoyant stone was, saying he really wanted one. However, Shrills told him to forget about it, as worrying about such things would distract him. Keller said he actually wanted to find one of these stones so Wood could eat it and boost her abilities. Before they could talk more, Rin appeared, running desperately towards the group, chased by a huge dragon, begging her master for help. Surprised, Shrills asked in fright if there really was a dragon, to which Wood replied yes, and it was a really big one. Hearing this, everyone immediately started running, fleeing the place quickly. Keller joked to Shrills that she had said dragons were very hard to find, and Shrills desperately replied she had no idea why a dragon would be right there at that moment. Just then, Clay was approaching the area and clearly heard the dragon's roar while looking for the demons. Keller's group hid behind a rock. Luckily, the dragon ended up going in the opposite direction. Relieved, Shrills commented it was finally gone. But then she questioned Rin about how she managed to bring a dragon to the camp when she was just supposed to get some fruit. Rin apologized, explaining she didn't know there would be a dragon hiding near the fruit. Wood analyzed the situation and commented that given the dragon's size, it had probably lived for over 1,000 years. Keller, understanding the importance of this, realized the dragon must have had a clairvoyant stone. Before he could finish his thought, a female voice added, confirming the dragon certainly had this stone. Everyone then realized Clay was there with them. Not immediately recognizing her, Keller asked who that person was, and Shrills quickly identified her. It was Clay from the White Tulkians. Alarmed, Rin asked what a member of the White Tulkians was doing there, and the group immediately got into attack position. Shrills explained that Clay was known for being an extremely cruel and merciless mage, famous for killing without mercy. At that moment, Keller thought he was tired of facing so many dangers, as he believed after leaving the Demon King's castle, he'd have a peaceful life. But it seemed there was nothing but trouble ahead, this time, facing such a dangerous mage. However, Clay calmly told everyone to relax, as there was no need to fight right then. Specifically, addressing the Tulkon trader, she said this fight would be pointless, as she could easily kill them all with a single spell. Frightened, Keller asked Shrills if this was really true, and Shrills seriously replied she didn't doubt it at all. She was absolutely certain that Clay was stronger than all of them combined. Worried, Rin desperately asked what they would do now, but Kelly repeated that they didn't need to fight right now. As long as they followed her without causing any trouble, they wouldn't die immediately. Suspicious, Keller asked why she wanted the group to follow her. Kelly explained she would take everyone to their captain Killian, leader of the White Tolkien. Clay then explained that her captain was looking for Kel Khaldoon and generously asked them to come with her. Despite this, Kel refused, saying that if they followed Kay, they would surely die. She, however, insisted that if they obeyed, they would at least survive a little longer. Determined, Keller wouldn't accept such a pathetic death, so he immediately attacked, firing an arrow at her. However, the arrow was easily blocked by Clay's magic shield, clearly showing the huge power difference between them. Shrills immediately told everyone to attack together, but even with everyone attacking at the same time, Clay's barriers stayed intact, resisting every blow. Determined, Rin charged alone against the barrier, saying she would never allow Keller to be taken, but her attack did little damage. Worried, Shrills yelled for Rin to back off as it was too dangerous to get that close right then. Clay counterattacked by throwing a large ice crystal at Rin, hitting her hard and knocking her away. After this, Clay calmly stated she would have no problem just taking Keller's body, then immediately activated her Ice Storm spell. Realizing the immediate danger, Shrills quickly pulled everyone under his magical shield, while Rin, though injured, managed to run in time to protect herself inside the shield. Keller worriedly asked if Rin was okay, but she only apologized, regretting not being able to help her master. Keller, however, said now wasn't the time for regrets. Meanwhile, Shrills warned everyone their shield wouldn't last long under Klee's constant attack. Desperate, Keller asked Shrills if there wasn't something they could do to beat that powerful spell, but Shrills explained that unfortunately, there was a big power difference between them and the enemy. At this point, Clay's attacks kept coming, creating bigger and bigger cracks in Shrill's protective shield. Everyone realized that if the shield broke, they had no chance of surviving. Completely desperate, Keller thought he needed to find an urgent solution. He then remembered that mysterious presence he had felt inside his mind before. Maybe if he could reach it again, he could get some help. Concentrating, Keller began to gather energy. This worried Shrills, who immediately asked what he was doing, because if he used his strength in there, it would weaken the shield even more. Despite this, Keller stayed focused, trying to summon the presence that lived in his mind. This fierce battle ended up drawing the dragon's attention again, and it started turning towards them, interested in the fight. At the same time, Clay finally felt the true energy of the Demon King coming from that boy, realizing the energy was only clear when he concentrated deeply. Now she finally understood why it had been so hard to find him until now. However, determined to finish her mission, Clay coldly stated that this was the end of Kel Khaldoon. At that moment, Keller was still anxiously wondering where that mysterious entity was that only appeared when he was about to die. With no other choice, Shrills warned him the shield wouldn't hold anymore, and the next moment, it completely broke. Just as Keller was about to be hit by Clay's deadly attack, the dragon suddenly appeared in front of them, blocking the attack and protecting everyone in the group, surprising both them and Clay. Confused, Clay wondered why a dragon would protect demons like them, something totally unexpected. However, the dragon quickly approached Keller, leaning in gently to receive affection. At that moment, something special happened. Keller and the dragon started to connect, sharing memories. Then Keller realized this dragon had a strong connection with his own mother. In the shared memories, he clearly saw that his mother and that dragon had been great friends in the past and had always walked together. Suddenly, Keller clearly heard the dragon's voice in his mind, calling his name. Surprised, he wondered if it had been telepathic communication. Then, unexpectedly, the dragon spat a crystal directly into Keller's hand. It was his clairvoyant stone. Surprised, Keller asked the dragon why it was suddenly giving him something so precious. The dragon quickly replied there was no time to explain, but advised him to hide his power immediately and flee as fast as possible. Confused, Keller asked why he was doing this, but the dragon insisted they run immediately, then turned on Clay and attacked her with a powerful breath of fire. Clay, protected by her barrier, found it strange that a dragon was defending demons, something completely out of the ordinary. While she was distracted by the attack, Keller realized this was no time to question the situation and yelled for everyone to run. The group then fled quickly while Clay watched, recognizing this dragon was really strong and puzzled as to why it interfered in the battle at that moment. Despite the dragon's power, its attacks weren't enough to break through Clay's powerful barrier, and she taunted it, asking if that was all it could do. Determined to finish it, she then conjured a huge spell called Meteor, casting it directly at the dragon. Seeing the powerful magic coming towards it, the dragon immediately remembered Keller's mother and the good times it had spent with her. In the next instant, the dragon was hit hard by the meteor. When Keller looked back, he saw only the fallen and lifeless body of the dragon. Kay commented that a dragon helping demons was certainly hiding something very strange, and she planned to access its memories before it died completely. However, before she could act, the dragon began to burn its own body with its flames, saying with great regret that humans were arrogant and cruel, and that the day would come when everyone would regret the terrible things they had done. The dragon then turned to ash, taking its own life and preventing its memories from being seen. Frustrated, Clay realized this had given Keller and the group enough time to hide from her. Even though she found this problematic, she maintained that it wouldn't change Cal Khaldoon's inevitable fate. All those demons were destined to die at the hands of the White Tolkiens. Meanwhile, back in safety, the demons started wondering why that dragon had acted like that. First, it tried to attack them, but then it ended up helping them. Wood, however, corrected them, saying the dragon wasn't really helping all of them, just Keller. Shrills agreed with this, clearly noticing that the dragon had connected in a special way with Keller, and it even seemed to have used some kind of magical power on him. Curious, Shrills asked Keller if he had anything to say about it. Keller explained that when he connected with the dragon, he was able to access some of its memories. Apparently that dragon had a strong connection with his mother. Rin, intrigued, commented that dragons didn't normally connect with demons and that it was hard to imagine what story led Keller's mother to become so close to a dragon. Keller replied he had no idea either, but confessed to feeling a strong sense of nostalgia for the dragon. Besides, it had not only protected him, but had also given him its own clairvoyant stone. At that moment, the group concluded that in the end, it was Keller's mother who had really saved everyone through her connection with that dragon. Keller remained thoughtful, reflecting on how strong that connection seemed, something deep and special, perceptible even in the dragon's gaze. After a while, Keller thanked the dragon deeply for the clairvoyant stone, happy that he could now give it to Wood, thus strengthening her abilities. Shrills agreed that with that item, it would be much easier to escape and protect themselves from the dangers posed by the White Tolkiens. Still, she questioned Keller, wondering if he was really sure he wanted to hand over something so rare. Keller, without hesitation, said yes, because only Wood could fully use the item. Determined, Wood consumed the stone immediately. As she did so, she felt immense power flowing through her body, and at the same time, she gained the dragon's memory. As she received these memories, Wood clearly saw the creature's painful past. The dragon had been born in a laboratory, used as a guinea pig by humans, undergoing terribly cruel experiments daily. He was subjected to constant torture, with parts of his body and limbs being torn off repeatedly, all to satisfy the curiosity and ambition of those humans. Centuries passed in this cruel way until the dragon became completely insane. The humans told each other that the dragon didn't even cry anymore. It had stopped crying generations ago. In that state, the dragon simply awaited its death without any hope. However, everything changed when Turk Khaldoon, a former demon king, considered the worst and cruelest of all, invaded the human kingdom, bringing destruction and killing every human in his path. During that violent battle, the laboratory ended up collapsing, and it was at that moment that the dragon finally managed to free himself from that hellish prison. After centuries, he could finally fly freely through the skies, feeling the fresh air for the first time. The dragon then sought out his fellow dragons to tell them of all the cruelty and torture he had suffered at the hands of the humans, suggesting they join him in attacking and punishing that cruel race. However, none of the other dragons believed his words. They already had a very close relationship with the humans, actively working with them in the war against the demons. None of the dragons could believe the terrible truth he revealed. The reality, however, was even crueler. Humans had developed this closeness to dragons precisely to make their experiments and sacrifices easier, using dragons as guinea pigs to find ways of controlling and manipulating them. However, the shocking truth was never accepted by the other dragons. Frustrated and disappointed, the dragon then tried to approach the demons, seeking some refuge or understanding among them. Unfortunately, the demons didn't like him either and completely rejected him. Unable to belong to either the dragons or the demons and completely isolated from humans, the dragon became lonely, lost in endless darkness and sadness, with no reason to exist. He decided to live alone, just waiting for the inevitable end of his life. Then, one unexpected day, he met a little demon child. That's how he met Cart. Seeing him for the first time, Cart innocently asked if that dragon was his mommy. The dragon was completely puzzled by this question, not understanding how he could have been mistaken that way. Before it could even answer properly, Cart ran up to the dragon and hugged it, as if it really were his mother. Although the dragon explained that he wasn't her mother, at that moment something changed inside him. At that moment, the dragon finally realized that perhaps there was a reason he had been born into this world. That child, Riste, who had suddenly appeared before him, had awakened a feeling in him that had long been dormant. Looking at the little demon's memories, the dragon saw clearly that they had both suffered immensely. Just as he had been tortured by humans, Cart had also been a victim of cruel experiments among demons. Among the demons, there was a particularly hostile group, the Tarake, known for carrying out extremely cruel experiments. They had used Choi's mother as an experiment, studying the magic of dragons in an attempt to control them. As soon as Cart hatched from that egg, she too was immediately turned into a guinea pig. Karst had the greatest potential among the demons, easily mastering dragon magic, especially the powerful magic of transformation. For this reason, the Tarka kept her in constant pain from birth throughout her life. Cart suffered and lived in deep despair until she finally developed powerful teleportation magic on her own and managed to escape from that terrible place. After wandering alone, exploring the world, she ended up meeting the dragon. When it realized this, the dragon thought that perhaps this encounter was fate, or perhaps just a coincidence. But one thing was certain, they had both been through intense suffering, so it would be impossible for them to act like strangers to each other. At that moment, Carice decided to call the dragon Master. The dragon said he preferred it that way, as it was certainly better than being called Mother. Smiling happily, Karist agreed to call him that, but said that deep down, a master was like a mother too. Keller listened closely as the dragon explained that he was not only Karist D's master, but also his protector and teacher. After that, the dragon taught Karist many important things, showing him how the world really worked and how a dragon should live by his side. Karist learned a lot of magic and absorbed many valuable lessons. So they spent many happy days together, unlike in the past when they both suffered a lot and time seemed to drag because of the pain. Now, the days flew by quickly because of the joy and happiness they shared. One day, the dragon unexpectedly thanked Carrie, and she didn't understand why he thanked her so suddenly, and asked why. But the dragon only replied that he felt he had to thank her right then, overcome with emotion. Karist gave the dragon a hug, which made the dragon realize how awesome it was watching her grow up. All the pain he'd felt his whole life seemed nothing compared to the huge happiness he got from raising and protecting Karist. But then, one day, something weird happened to the dragon. He felt really strange, like he was blacking out. Karist, worried, asked what was wrong, but the dragon suddenly just stared at her. He asked who she was, wondering if she was in human or demon form, demanding she tell him right away. Karist, totally confused, asked if this was some kind of test, but the dragon, out of control, breathed fire at her, yelling that he hated humans and demons. Karist couldn't understand what was going on, even after all the happy times they'd shared. The dragon's mind had finally snapped because of the terrible experiments he'd gone through. His sanity had hit its limit, just like it had for other dragons before him. In that moment, he completely lost it. Desperate, Karist asked if her master really didn't remember her. Only then did the dragon briefly come back to his senses, confused, asking what had happened. He apologized to Karist, saying he hadn't meant to attack her. But at that moment, he realized he really wasn't well and needed to get away from her right away. Karist was heartbroken by her master's decision and begged him not to leave her. But the dragon knew he had to get away to protect her. He didn't want to hurt her. In a moment of losing control, knowing his end was near, he decided to spend his last days with happy memories by her side. But over time, he went through cycles of remembering and forgetting, realizing most of his memories were slowly disappearing. One day, though, he felt a very familiar energy and instinctively went towards it, recognizing it as Karist's energy, the one that stayed in his most precious memories. When he finally reached that energy, he realized it wasn't Karist, but a different child. Although he clearly felt he needed to protect her, looking at that child's memories, he understood she was a descendant of Karist and realized Karist had a grandchild. Determined, he vowed to protect that child until his last breath. In his final moments, the dragon deeply thanked his beloved daughter, Karist, because, thanks to her, his last days weren't filled with pain and suffering. He felt happy and peaceful from knowing the child he had raised with so much love and care. At that moment, Wood, deeply moved by the memories she had just absorbed, fell to her knees, explaining that all the dragon's memories had been transferred to her, even though she couldn't remember everything clearly. She felt it was like a fading dream. She was absolutely certain the dragon had died happily. Shrills, still disbelieving, questioned if it was really true that Wood couldn't remember the memories she'd absorbed, finding her emotional reaction strange since she was crying even though she said she couldn't remember clearly. Meanwhile, Wood continued to silently think about all the happiness and sadness mixed up in the dragon's memories that were now part of her. Wood commented that the new abilities probably wouldn't appear all at once. They'd develop slowly over time. In a worst-case scenario, Keller might have trouble using these new abilities for a while. However, Rin replied that Keller wouldn't, as he'd still have plenty of time. Wood then explained that for now they had no choice but to wait until Keller's abilities fully kicked in. Soon after, Wood asked what they should do next, since they weren't sure if the talking group would find them again. She explained they needed to quickly find a safe spot to hide and asked Shrills to show Keller the world map. Looking at the map, they saw that on the right side was Tala's Reign, the human continent, while on the left was the demon continent. Where they were now was right on the border between these two areas. At this, Keller said the best thing to do would be to head south. Rin questioned if going south was really better than heading straight into demon territory. Keller explained there was a reason he'd been sent to Arsal, and part of that reason was definitely to find Shrills. However, the demon kingdom had fallen, so it was likely the entire demon continent was now controlled by humans. Shrills confirmed this, pointing out that before the Demon King died, not only the Talon group members but also the entire human army had used the chance to completely invade the demon continent. At this point, Rin suggested they try to gather the remaining demons to follow Keller, but he explained that for now, it would be practically impossible. Keller remembered that, as Rin herself had seen in the Earth Demon's territory, he'd been branded as the cowardly son of the Demon King who ran away. So, even the demons themselves didn't like him. Now, they'd probably keep thinking that until he could show his true power. Rin then commented that maybe even Shrills couldn't fix this easily, and Shrills agreed, saying that except for her own father, there was nothing solid that could prove she was really the Demon King's daughter. Besides, because of everything she had done during her time with the Talon group, it would be very hard to get forgiveness and acceptance among the demons again. Faced with this tricky situation, Keller stated that the first thing to do was to create a dungeon to serve as a base. He also explained that he needed to achieve certain victories to win back the trust of the demon people, making them follow his lead again. Also, he needed to increase his power quickly. Wood immediately agreed, saying they were finally motivated, and from then on, they needed to achieve great things, gaining recognition and honor so that the demons would naturally rally around them again. To do this, Keller would need to clearly prove he deserved to become the next Demon King. However, she concluded that for now, the most important thing was to buy time to set up a strong position and create a solid plan for the future. Keller then decided their first base would be in the south. Everyone was super excited about this idea, He felt a huge sense of relief because even though he knew the plan wasn't super detailed or secure, he realized he finally had allies by his side and the companions he desperately needed. However, he was still being hunted by those darn powerful monsters. Facing the talking group right now would be extremely dangerous. For now, he needed to get more information and think about everything he'd experienced so far. Keller realized that many things in this world were similar to elements from the game he played in his past life. From the events to the names and descriptions of the monsters, there was clearly a deep connection between this world and his previous life, and he was determined to use this to his advantage. With his current power, his status as the Demon King's son, and all the knowledge he'd gained from playing his favorite strategy game in his past life, he would forge his path to victory. Nothing he had been through would be for nothing. Meanwhile, in a nearby demon city, several demons were begging the human invaders for mercy, kneeling and surrendering. Even so, they were brutally devoured by a large flaming wolf. Deed sarcastically asked if the demons had said anything, as she couldn't hear them. The city's demon leader complained that the invaders were too cruel, since they had clearly surrendered. At that moment, Killian killed the leader with her axe, saying that demons should just stay put and die. Caucus stood nearby, quickly eliminating another demon, and told the captain that it was all over. At this moment, the human captain was talking via hologram with Clay herself, who informed him that a dragon had helped Keller and that she hadn't been able to track him down again since then. Hearing this, Killian said he surely couldn't be too far from the Earth Demon's territory, and Clay replied that she had already sent her butterflies to track them down. Killian was pleased with the news and added that Keller would probably never return to demon territory, so they should get ready and go meet Klee as soon as possible. Audrey, worried, asked what they would do with the remaining demons and if they could leave them alive, as she wanted to eliminate them all immediately. However, Killian asked her to calm down and said it wouldn't be too late as long as they killed Keller first. The most important thing now was to completely wipe out the bloodline that had killed their brother. Meanwhile, Keller and his group were riding unicorns south. During the journey, the weather got colder and colder, which everyone noticed. Shrills explained this was normal, as they had been riding steadily south for a week without a break. Keller thought it was very lucky they hadn't been chased by the talking group during that journey. It would be great if they could avoid a fight with them, at least until they had finished their preparations. Suddenly, all the unicorns stopped at once, refusing to move forward. Wood explained that the unicorns realized they wouldn't be able to survive the extremely harsh environment ahead. Understanding the situation, Keller said everything was fine since they had arrived exactly where they wanted to and gave the unicorns permission to leave. Wood kindly thanked the unicorns for their help and wished them a safe return. Rin was worried, saying that with such extreme weather, neither humans nor demons would be able to survive for long. However, Keller replied that this was exactly what they needed right now, as the unwelcoming region would make it difficult for the enemy to chase them. Now the goal was to find the best possible spot to set up their base. Meanwhile, one of the butterflies sent by Clay spotted the unicorns returning along the path. She found their movements strange, wondering why exactly 4 unicorns were moving from south to north. Shortly afterwards, Keller and his companions arrived on an island, ready to start their new phase. There, Wood said that the cave on that island was definitely the best and safest place for them to set up their base. Keller asked if she could check for monsters inside, but Wood explained that her mind's eye only responded to nature and she couldn't detect living creatures yet. However, looking around, Wood noticed that the nearby boats had been abandoned for a long time, meaning no one had been in the area for quite a while. Even so, the boats still looked usable, so the group decided to use them to reach the island. As they rowed towards the island, they noticed they were about 200 meters from the shore, which didn't seem far, but the waves were quite strong, making the crossing a bit tough. Keller realized that with those conditions, it would be easy to spot any invaders trying to reach the island. Finally, the group managed to reach the cave on the island. As they entered, Keller asked if Shrills could put an illusion spell at the cave entrance, and she replied it would be easy. Soon after, Shrills created a fake wall made of stones, completely hiding the entrance. Keller observed that clearly no one had been in that place for a long time, so he asked everyone to explore and split up to quickly check out the new area. Before that, though, he asked Wood to describe the cave's layout better. Using her skills, she quickly created a mental map, explaining that there were two different paths, but they both led to the same place. A large, open room that ended in a deeper room inside the cave, which had a small exit. Keller suggested the group split up to check both paths at the same time and then meet in the central open room. Shrills quickly asked to go with Keller, but Rin immediately jumped in, disagreeing, saying the strongest should stick together, since they didn't know what dangers they might find inside those unknown tunnels. Shrills wasn't thrilled with Rin's comment, but eventually agreed to go with Wood the other way. As Shrills and Wood walked together through the extremely cold tunnel, they noticed glowing stones on the cave's ceiling that lit up the whole path. These stones were made of a powerful mix of light and ice magic, which surprised Shrills. She said they must have been created by a very experienced magician, since they were still working now. However, she still didn't fully trust Wood and decided to make it clear, saying she was only traveling with her because Keller wanted her to. She wasn't the type to easily accept new companions. For a moment, the two looked at each other, and Wood calmly said that Shrills didn't need to feel forced to call her a companion, ironically suggesting she could just think of her as a slave. Unmoved, Shrills turned away and simply replied that she didn't like her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the cave, Keller was looking at the glowing stones and commented with interest that it would be great if they could make those light stones themselves. Rin readily agreed, saying she could research it later for him, but then told him to be careful not to trip over one of the stones. Along the way, Keller noticed how incredibly motivated Rin seemed at that moment, and wondered why she was suddenly so excited. Just ahead, Keller and Rin found something unexpected inside the tunnel: a slime. Keller immediately got excited, finding it very interesting. He thought he'd only seen creatures like that in video games and had always wanted to touch one in real life. Rin simply stepped on the slime and started tearing it apart, asking how it dared to get in Keller's way. So she vaporized the creature without a second thought. Keller, a bit disappointed, thought perhaps she was expecting a compliment and said she did a good job, even though he had only wanted to touch the slime out of curiosity. Rin thanked him profusely for his words and told him he didn't need to worry about anything, as she would take care of him later. The group then found a huge golem guarding the passage. Keller commented on how gigantic the creature was and told Rin to stay behind it. But Rin replied she wouldn't do that, as she had promised to protect him and would defeat anything that got in the way. Meanwhile, Shrills found something that shocked her: a necklace made of rare crystals. She commented on how valuable it was, realizing they had stumbled upon a room full of treasures. She put the necklace on and asked if it looked nice, and Wood just replied indifferently. Shrills, seeing this, became a little thoughtful, imagining that if it had been Rin, she would have gotten a compliment. But Wood didn't even react, which only strengthened Shrill's idea that she didn't like her. Meanwhile, on the other side, the golem began to attack Rin, who even managed to block a few blows and hit back. But when she was hit directly, she was thrown hard against the wall and spat out a lot of blood. Shrills was shocked and commented that this was impossible, as without any weapons, normal attacks would have no effect. But Rin insisted she could handle it anyway. Even so, her blow didn't pierce the golem's stone layer, and she was hit again. Shrills didn't understand why she kept trying, but Rin was determined, and thought that at this rate, she wouldn't even be good enough to be Keller's attendant. She remembered the first day she entered the demon castle as a servant. The Demon King asked his son if he wanted to be friends with the new servant, and Keller, still a child, said yes, he wanted to be friends with Rin. The king, who was called Hell, got angry at this answer and said that this was ridiculous, as a servant was just a servant, and that Keller should make the contract immediately. Crying, Keller apologized to Rin and agreed to make the contract. Rin, however, only thanked him because at that moment she understood that Keller wanted to treat her as a friend and not just as a servant. And this made her feel extremely happy because for the first time she felt recognized as a person. That same night, when Keller fell asleep from crying, Rin watched him and made a silent promise that she would protect him and help him until he became the greatest of all demons. She promised that she would work hard for him. Over time, however, Keller became weak and cowardly, constantly outmaneuvered and humiliated by his brothers, He always came back to his room saying he had almost died again and was always scared, which made Rin think that if he died, she would die too. That's why she began to act harshly, trying to make him stronger. Despite this, she never changed her core self. Even so, Rin was ignored and discriminated against by the other servants. She only ate what was left over from the other servants and wasn't considered worthy of even being named. Hot lava was once poured over her body, and when she slept, it was in the stables next to the pigs. She wasn't even safe there, as she was tortured in that place, and they even said that Lord TM had been seduced by her body alone, so everyone was there just to take care of her. And it was at that moment that Rin began to hate Keller, because she thought that if she killed him, the contract between the two of them would end. In a moment of desperation, she tried to stab him, but he still didn't die because Keller's power of regeneration was too strong and wouldn't allow him to die. Rin wondered why he just wouldn't die, why she had to endure such a miserable life because of him, and all Keller could do was apologize to her. After that, Rin gave up living as if she were just a body without a soul. She realized that something had suddenly changed in him, as if he were a completely different person than he used to be. And at that moment, she understood that he was the true heir to the Demon King. Then, during the fight, she managed to dodge another blow from the golem and understood that if she was just a burden to Keller, she would only get in his way. With all her remaining strength, she struck the golem's neck and tore its head off with a clean cut. Rin thought that if she wasn't useful to Keller, she didn't deserve to be by his side, so she knelt down in front of him and said that she never wanted to leave him. The moment Keller tried to talk to her, the golem reacted again, even though it was headless. But this time, Keller charged at it decisively and landed a direct blow on the creature's chest, hitting it right in the core. With that, the golem fell dead once and for all. Seeing that, Rin wondered if she was an idiot. She had risked her life so many times, and even when she was in danger, Keller had not abandoned her. She thought that even if she ran away, even if she turned her back on him, he would never have the courage to leave her behind. Then Keller told her that she shouldn't regret what she had done, and Rin, overcome with emotion, ran to embrace her master with all her might. Keller looked at Rin, who was still feeling really bad about herself. He told her there was no need to be sorry for anything she'd done. He spoke softly, making sure she really heard him. It was like he was saying, "Hey, it's okay. You did good." Rin's eyes got all watery and she just couldn't hold back anymore. She rushed forward, throwing her arms around Keller in a super tight hug. She buried her face in his clothes, just clinging to him with all her might. It was a moment where all the stress and pain she'd been carrying just melted away in that embrace. It was clear she felt safe and incredibly grateful to him.